Good evening, folks. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers, and fear not, because we came on a little early tonight because we're going to start something new. And that's at the beginning of each broadcast, we're going to have a question and answer period. So we're going to give you the opportunity to ask questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them. This kind of eliminates a long period of time that people have to wait because of the introduction phase to see the broadcast. So I see it's beginning to populate. So, of course, our live broadcast begins at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. But in the meantime, instead of having you wait 3 or 4 minutes of a blank screen, if you will, with some music, I'm going to come on 10 minutes early and give you the opportunity to ask me questions. And then I'll answer them to the best of my ability. We have on Facebook and on Rumble, we have questions that you could certainly ask in the chat room. And I already have a few that I will answer. But tonight's broadcast is going to be pretty interesting, folks. Peter Downing from Canada is with us. He's going to lay out what exactly is going on factually in Canada and how to overcome some of those problems. I'm also going to be giving you an update on the SOS letter writing campaign, which, folks, to be frank with you, it's gone far beyond my expectations with regard on who on earth is actually writing us. And in addition to that, we're going to talk about what we're doing here in the United States with regard to a host of other issues. But I want to I do have some questions people had asked me earlier. And like I said, if you just tuned in, 10 minutes before broadcast, we're going to have a question answer period. And you could ask me some questions if I could find them here in the chat room. One individual wrote and wanted to know a little bit better my position with regard to the war in Ukraine. This is from an American citizen. Well, to begin with, folks, I've said over and over again, my greatest fear was that the United States government would get itself involved in another Vietnam. And since the day that war started, since the day the United States of America got involved, there's been nothing but an escalation. No one's going to convince me different that had Joe Biden kept his mouth shut and stopped poking the bear, if you will, in this case, Putin, in the face with regard to Ukraine becoming a member of NATO, we wouldn't have had this problem that we're facing. But now, see, folks, as I said all along, now think about Vietnam as I go step by step right now with regard to Ukraine. Number one, Vietnam, what was the first step? Well, we didn't like the government that was elected in Vietnam, so we had something to do with changing that government. Look at Ukraine. It went from that to sending money, tons and tons of money to the Vietnamese, South Vietnam government. Well, tons and tons of money going to the Ukrainian government. It went from sending the money to sending what? To sending military hardware. So we sent a lot of military hardware, military weapons, military bullets, on and on and on and on. It went from sending military weapons and bullets to what? It went in sending advisors. Now, think about this. When we sent advisors to Vietnam, the pledge from the president then was, well, we're just sending advisors. They're going to advise the South Vietnamese on how to do combat maneuvers. Well, the same thing with the United States. We send advisors to do what? To train Ukrainians how to fight a war. So then we ended up sending combat troops, folks. We did. Now, they're not in direct combat, but they're apparently, according to our government, guarding our embassy. Get a load of that, folks. So then it escalates from that to what? Think about this. To now sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Now, what do you think is going to happen, folks, with those fighter jets? I do not trust the Ukrainian government. I have not trusted them from day one. And my worry is, and it's a real worry because it could drag the United States of America into a ground war with Russia that we don't need and that no American wants. What if the Ukrainian government decides to use those F-16s to go deep in, to penetrate deeply into the Russian homeland? Already there's been attacks on the Russian homeland, pretty much on the border states. There's been alleged attacks as close as Moscow, if you will. Those are minor attacks at this point. But you put these weapons into the hands of the Ukrainian government. Look at Zelensky wants to drag us into this war, folks. He wants to drag us into this war. And unfortunately, we have a president who's going to walk right into it. And the blood of American troops may end up being spilled on that Ukrainian soil. I don't like what's going on. I don't like any war. I think it's a tragedy what Russia's doing to Ukraine, what Ukraine is doing to Russia. A lot of innocent people get killed in war. It's an unnecessary war. But my question has always been this. If the NATO countries, I'm talking about the European countries, since the war is in their backyard, if they're really concerned about what's going on there, why don't we hear from them? Why don't they say, we're going to send our troops in. We're going to end this. We're going to fight the Russians. You know what? We're going to send our NATO troops in from each and every individual country. How about it, Germany and France and on and on and on? How about you guys sending those troops in if you're so concerned about it? The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we're ever going to see NATO troops in a war with Russia. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do believe there is a possibility that Joe Biden is going to drag America into a ground war. And unfortunately, if that happens, the Canadians may find their young men and women going into that war because we're on the same continent, are we not? Trudeau and Biden are from the same bed, if you will. But hopefully and prayerfully, that's not going to happen. So my concern is the question that has never been answered by any politician of both parties with regard to the war in Ukraine. Where is the national security interest of the United States of America with regard to Ukraine? Where is it? Do you know that question was asked right before we ended up going into Vietnam with combat troops? Where was the United States national security interest concerned with regard to the Vietnam War? And remember, folks, those of you who have lived during that time, as I have, the hue and cry from Washington, LBJ, JFK, Richard Nixon was, well, there's going to be a domino effect. They called it the domino theory. Once the Chinese communists put a grip on the North Vietnamese government, they're going to take South Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. It never happened, folks. It never happened. 50,000 plus American troops killed in action, hundreds of thousands wounded. And those men and women who fought that war for the United States, unbeknown to a lot of people, they won every battle. Isn't that interesting? They actually won every battle. But you know who surrendered? The government. The government surrendered. And folks, I just don't want to see this happen once again. And to my American viewers and listeners, you better wake up. Mom, Dad, you better wake up and realize that your sons and daughters, their future, their destiny is going to be determined very, very soon by this White House if things do not change. Now, with regard to some of the letters that we're receiving, some of them, well, thousands of them. We've received thousands of letters, and we hope we receive a lot more. And a little bit later, well, actually at the beginning of our broadcast at 7 p.m., I'm going to let you know where those letters are coming from. Rather astonishing as we go through these letters and we see exactly where they're coming from. So the Canadians ought to be proud of what you started in a very peaceful and lawful manner. Now, I say peaceful and lawful for two reasons. It is the truth. Number one. Number two, Justin Trudeau and his communist government doesn't like to hear that the people of Canada are doing things within the framework of the law. Because as far as I'm concerned, and many are concerned, it is in our view, and I speak for many, many Americans that know what's going on in Canada, it is not the people who broke the law there. It is not the people who broke the law with regard to their freedom, their rights and liberties, folks. It is the Trudeau government that broke the law. It is the Trudeau government that used excessive force. It is the Trudeau government that violated the rights of people. And Justin Trudeau probably doesn't like to hear that. Neither does the parliament members who support him. So from what I hear, some of them, if not them, their operatives watch this broadcast. But you guys are in trouble. I'm talking to the parliament and I'm talking to Trudeau. And I'll tell you why I say that. You're in serious trouble politically. Why? Because the world is now watching. I've got proof of that. That's why we started this letter writing campaign. It's easy for me to say, well, the world's watching. But when you start getting letters from foreign countries, when people in the European Parliament begin to speak out as to what's going on in Canada with regard to the Trudeau government, well, you got a problem up there. And by the way, you're not alone, Trudeau. Joe Biden's in the same boat you are. But you know what? The boat's sinking. It is sinking. I'm telling you, we know it's sinking in America. Believe me, what's going on in this country with regard to how the American people are responding with strength, with force within the framework of the law, I've got to tell you something, from local school boards to the courts, to the Congress, to the Senate. I go all the way up to the White House coming in 2024. I've got to tell you something. That boat is going to sink. The Biden boat's going to sink. And Justin Trudeau, keep an eye on that boat, because your boat's next. Because the Canadian people, they're going to win this fight for liberty and freedom. Make no mistake about it. It's always that way, folks. We know that. Every tyrant walking the face of the earth from day one. You know, they had their 15 minutes of fame, and they're probably going to have a little bit more of that moving forward. But at the end of this war, at the end of this political fight, ideological war, spiritual war, they always lose. They don't get it, but they will soon. As long as you stay within the framework of the law, no violence, no things that are going to upset the true narrative of people fighting for liberty and freedom. Let's not let violent people and people that kind of go off the edge take that away from us, because we're all doing a great job and we're winning here in America. And by the way, those of you in Canada are winning also. One more question. Let me see what time it is, folks. Well, it's 7:03. So here's what we're going to do, folks. That's the end of the question and answer period. So that you know what we're going to do now. Now, let me make sure I got this right. This is all new now, what we're doing. Well, here's what we're going to do right now. Well, folks, what do you think? That intro went pretty good for the first time. I was rather pleased with it. All right, now, folks, before we speak to our guest, Peter Downing from Canada, a couple of things I want to speak to you about real quick. To begin with, the SOS letter writing campaign. How about this? We're getting thousands of letters, but we need thousands more. Just want you to know that, okay? So please keep it up. Get your friends, your neighbors, relatives to send us a letter. It's on our Facebook page. Just scroll down a bit and you'll find, if you don't know what we're talking about or how you're to do that, please find it, and then we'll post it again soon. But here's where the letters are coming from. And I've got to tell you, what an absolute tribute to the people of Canada. And I want to thank our American fellow countrymen and women who also are being involved in spreading the word. So obviously we're getting thousands from Canada and the United States of America. How about this, folks? How about Poland? How about Portugal? How about the United Kingdom? And here's one that surprised me. A couple of them did. Here's one that surprised me. Letters from the Czech Republic, letters from Australia, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and today, letters from France. And more and more and more countries, I believe, are watching what's going on with the Canadians and are saying, look, we're going to lend our ears and our support to them. Now, of course, as you know, our goal here at Campaign for America is to get these letters before the United States Congress, before our media, and let them know the magnitude of the problem that the United States is facing with regard to national security in relation to Canada. We cannot legally get involved, and I would never want to get involved in the inner workings of the Canadian government. It's up to the people. The people of Canada can go, they can vote, they could form committees and groups like we have in America, and heighten public awareness to a point that maybe many of those, like here in America in the past, was so blind to what's going on that they're going to take action. And I always say this, and please hear me, and you hear me repeat it many, many times. Make sure it's within the framework of the law. And I say that all the time because it just so happens tonight, we got a report from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to be prepared during this 2024 election cycle for a dramatic increase in violence across America. That is troubling. I don't like to hear that. I think any American that becomes violent is not serving any purpose but hurting the true the true meaning of our Constitution. They're hurting what our founders wanted. They lost their lives so that we wouldn't have to lose ours. And so we got to do things within the framework of the law. We have the law on our side. And when I hear the Department of Homeland Security issue such a warning, it's troubling. And I've told every American, and you're listening, thousands of you are listening. If anybody wants you to get involved in anything that is against the law, that is going to promote violence, you got to stay away from it. Just stay away from it. We are very effective and have been very effective in this country in making dramatic changes in the way our educational systems are working out now, in the way law enforcement is going to be responding to crime. It takes time, it takes a lot of effort, but you do it within the framework of the law. And I'm going to tell you something, folks. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful victory. But always keep in mind, young people are watching. They're watching what we as leaders say, what we do, and how we do it. And the one thing we don't want to teach our young people is that the only way to victory is violence. Well, that is the very violence that will destroy our country here in America. Do not go down that road. So that's where we are with that issue. Now, one more breaking news tonight. In fact, I just responded to it on Twitter, and this is troubling. Breaking news tonight. I just got it right before we went on the air, folks. The media is reporting that the Mexican president has told Florida Hispanics, don't give one single vote to DeSantis. So is that not election interference from a foreign government? This guy's out of his mind. This is the president of Mexico, where the drug cartel controls his entire country. This guy can't control anything in his country. He can't control the border. He can't control the immigration problem. He can't control his military. He can't control the cartel. Maybe the cartel controls him. But my response to that on Twitter, and I'm getting a lot of responses over social media now, was that it's time for the United States military to go into Mexico, to go in and annihilate the cartel and teach this guy, this president, a lesson. Believe me, if a Republican was in office, maybe we would have done that. In a few weeks, folks, a few weeks on this broadcast, you're going to hear from an ICE agent. That's right, an ICE agent who was shot and whose partner was killed right in front of him. A dramatic story. I've already spoken to him. He's going to be on in a few weeks. But this is why this statement by that president of Mexico really, really got me. Really got me. So anyone who wasn't voting for DeSantis, go out and vote for him now. Go ahead, go and vote for him. Teach this guy a lesson. Now, many people will ask, well, in fact, I've been asked, well, who do I support in the primary? Well, right now, folks, I'm watching and I'm listening closely. I'm not sold yet on some people. I want to hear what they have to say, what they have to offer for America. And I'm very open, very frank with you. I'm tired of name calling. I'm tired of the drama. I'm exhausted, as millions of Americans are. We need some people in office that are going to get serious and talk about the future of America, not America's past, but the future of America. But more on that as we move forward. All right, let's get to Peter Downing. All right, I spoke to him earlier. We recorded this a couple of days ago. But folks, I want to tell you what a blessing this guy is to Canada. Here is Peter Downing. Well, as promised, ladies and gentlemen, I now have Peter Downing. He is from Canada. He's been on the forefront of fighting for the individual rights, freedoms, and liberties of people in his country. He brings us facts. He puts things in perspective. What I like about him, he's always working within the framework of the law, and he's bringing a great testimony to not only people in Canada, but here in the United States and around the world, that when someone stands up and speaks out in an articulate and intelligent way, they get things done. And he's one of those individuals. So, Peter, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Well, a lot's going on in Alberta. Here in the U.S., we're getting all sorts of information, whether fact or fantasy, we don't know. That's why I have you on tonight with regard to speaking about what's going on in Alberta with a lot of these fires. I also would like to speak to you about some of the important pieces of legislation, including this insane idea, this communist idea, at least in my view, of mandating vaccines for every Canadian citizen. So let's start with the fires in Alberta. Can you put things in perspective for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I live in Edmonton, Alberta. Edmonton's the capital. And so we're about 5 hours north of the Montana border. Where the wildfires are happening for the most part is in our oil country. Alberta's known for oil and gas. I work in that industry. I'm a flesh and blood Canadian trucker who works in the Alberta oil patch, and I pump. I service drilling rigs, and it's kind of like from Edmonton. It's kind of like in a northwest direction is kind of where the fires are, and you can look at it from an aerial map, and you can see that. We were quite fortunate. We were just coming back from a job yesterday, and there was emergency alerts and fires going on around us. Thankfully, where we were was pretty good. In terms of what you mentioned about facts and putting things in perspective, there have been arrests made for arson. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Grand Prairie, which is about 5 hours northwest of where I live, close to the British Columbia border. There's been at least one arrest made for arson. Where I think the concern about arson, about bad actors, that kind of stuff coming up, is that in particular it's the Alberta oil fields, the oil patch, and that's been an issue of political contention with the Trudeau government for years, and successive governments before then. We've had two past prime ministers say that we need to either shut down or transition out of the oil fields, the Alberta oil and gas. And so that's, I think, where some of that's coming from. There is arson. There's definitely no connection, at least this point, that any of the fires that have been deliberately caused have anything to do with the government. And with that said, there also is a parallel narrative, and there's been a narrative going on for a long time about the need, climate change, temperatures rising, that kind of stuff. It's always been a pretext for more economic regulation and almost economic depredation of working class folks. So we see that parallel narrative going on in the news about, again, more of a push for climate change, more regulations, shutting down industry, that sort of thing. I think folks put two and two together. I think that, again, just like you said, facts are important, and the facts are there are wildfires. They are primarily in oil and gas country, and there have been at least one arrest made for arson in relation to it.
Peter, do you think, I was going to ask you about motive, but you may have answered it. And I know now this is just speculation on our part because of the fact you just presented to us. Absent knowing a real credible motive, could a motive be this climate change activist? I mean, trying to get a point across? Because if it's targeted in the oil and gas industry, it seems to me that it's a possibility that this does in fact have something to do with the political agenda of those who are believing in the climate change agenda.
Right. The short answer is yes, to bring more facts to the table as well. And I'm not a geologist or a wildfire expert or anything like that. But it's well known that the peat, the moss that grows in the area it's fire. It's prone to fires. So that's, while this is not the first time wildfires have gone on, to the credit of the provincial government, unlike the previous provincial government in 2016, the current provincial government is they're doing a good job of bringing all the resources to bear to kind of to fight this. Yes, climate activists exist. They've existed for a very long time, all over, but in Alberta especially. I know that after I left the police, and before kind of my role in oil and gas now, a part of my transition was doing security and surveillance for a private company on the pipeline, monitor the new pipeline, that monitoring eco activists. In 2020, I came back from a family vacation, and there's these under the auspices of being First Nations railway blockades, which were actually real life Canadian Antifas. They were shutting down railways that the Trudeau government and the police at the time were really turning a blind eye to and almost enabling. And when I returned, I just happened to come back, and again within the framework of the law, myself and a bunch of other good old boys in Edmonton just decided it's not going to happen, and we went and we shut it down ourselves. We took all the stuff off the train tracks. We used snow to put out the fire that was in the oil drums. We told all the eco activists to get lost, and the police stood by watching, not doing anything one way or another. And so eco activism has gone a long time. It's taking more of it seems to have more of a home within institutionalized political parties. In Alberta, that would be the Liberal Party. And it is a real life thing. One of the other concerns that's coming up, because we have a history during natural disasters, in 2012, High River, Alberta, which is just outside of Calgary, Alberta, had serious flooding. When the police went down, RCMP, and I was actually part of that unit. I wasn't dispatched. I was a police officer at the time, still serving. I wasn't dispatched to go in to deal with those floods. I had to stay at my home base. But the guys I work with did. And that was when the famous High River gun grab happened, because we have a licensing system in Canada where the police can look you up and know exactly who owns a firearm and where. The police were going into people's homes and taking the firearms out of the abandoned homes. We're hearing some reports of this. Again, this is what I'm hearing. There are individuals who have reported that there may be some, again, and I'm saying that this is a third party report, so it is circumstantial. That
if I may interrupt 1 minute, I'm glad you brought that up, Peter. So we've gotten hundreds of emails about police going into homes illegally, confiscating weapons, but I have not found or spoken to one person that could deliver credible evidence that that's happening. And I like the way you framed it, you framed it that you didn't say, well, it's happening and it's not because we don't have facts. So for the sake, again, of clarity, and by the way, this is excellent. I mean, you've given us some real good, credible, excellent information on the fires. Did in the past the police actually do this?
Yes.
In the past? And then probably based on that, people are saying they're doing it again. But is there any credible evidence that they're doing it now?
I have not heard a report from any firearms owner saying that their firearms were taken. So everything that's being heard right now it's not circumstantial, it's hearsay. But it did, and again, it's a very well-known fact. In 2012, during the High River flooding, police did go illegally into people's homes and seize their lawfully possessed firearms.
The importance of having an individual like you on the air. Let me share with you how really critically important it is having an individual like yourself who could bring us some facts. Is that I'm convinced that there are people in the government and there are people who are looking to fight for freedom and liberty, all right, but are spreading a lot of bad information, disinformation. And some of these things, Peter, and I'd like you to weigh in on this, certainly distracts us. It distracts the the narrative that we should be speaking. It distracts us from the road we should be going down. And people are getting up in a frenzy, and they're following all of these unnecessary paths. So, do you find that also happening? And in your country, I know there are broadcasts that are doing what we do, and they're bringing credible information to people. So if you could help me urge your citizens, and believe me, we have the same problem here in the United States. I mean, we've got all kinds of people making all kinds of crazy allegations about whether it be the government or the freedom fighters, etc. But could you help me, because you're a Canadian, I'm not, share with the people how important it is for them to absorb critical information that is credible, and at the same time, just push that delete button on all of the garbage and get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly, sir. It's definitely a strategy of those who would oppose freedom, disinformation. Whether it's militaries have always engaged in deception strategies in their operations, and we're entering this period of unrestricted warfare where everything is being used as a weapon. It's not bombs and bullets; it's information. And a known strategy of those who would oppose freedom is to put out narratives that have a kernel of truth, and they touch upon some of the things. So we might say we don't like Justin Trudeau, or we would want to see him arrested for things that are documented, crimes and malfeasance that is documented. But in our desire and in our emotions for something, we latch on to anything that's on a screen, or any piece of information that says, aha, see, I got it. And what happens is that information can be disproven. And once it's disproven, then the people who were running around saying, aha, look, I got it, they don't seem credible anymore. And that's used as a tool to be able to discredit the overall narrative. So our enemies will actually put out these fake narratives that seem to be against themselves, that people in the freedom movement will latch onto. And again, it's designed for us to look silly. It's designed for us to look not credible. And it ends up hurting what we're trying to do, because there is a very legitimate element of government malfeasance, corporate malfeasance, foreign bad actors, espionage, subversion that is going on, that is designed to erode the cultural, what makes Canada and America strong. I always say that one of the most fearsome forces on planet Earth is when Canadians and Americans work together for a common good. And though the other side of it too is the profit motive. You have folks out there who want to push doom and gloom, and it's the end of the world, and Justin Trudeau's going to do this, and Joe Biden's going to do this, and the UN is going to be dropping helicopters out of the sky. Maybe that's a part of it, but it's also designed to get us to emotionally shut down so that we can't think of creative or good or positive, effective solutions, while at the same time there's people who profit off of pushing this doom and gloom narrative. They can't sell their survival kits if we're saying let freedom ring, and we're moving towards that.
Man, that is well said. Boy, I could not have said that any better. Peter, something I'm concerned about here in the United States, and perhaps maybe some concerns in Canada. We are in a real serious situation now. Never seen America go down the road it's going in. Violence is out of control. Criminals are controlling the streets. Probably next month, June 1st, we're ready for probably the most catastrophic economic collapse if our debt ceiling is not lifted, if the Congress and the president don't get together. But here's what I'm worried about. And I've said this all along, and I'd like you to weigh in on this, not only for the United States, but for your own country, because I've heard some things going on in Canada that, as well as the United States, that are not going to be healthy for either of our countries. And that is the possibility of resorting to violence. In America, it's no secret that probably 95%, if not more, Americans are armed. They have weapons here, and 95% plus more are obedient to the law. They're responsible gun owners. But unfortunately, there are people in this country, as well as other countries, who are really trying to create a frenzy amongst the population. And when I hear the word civil war and revolution, I get worried, because we're at a point in this country where It's going to just take a trigger. Somebody's going to do something stupid, and they're going to create a real catastrophic problem in our country. And I've urged the American people to be very, very aware of their surroundings. Don't get involved with any organization or any leader that advocates any type of violence. We have a Constitution of the United States in this country, and the law is on our side. And we have mechanisms within the framework of the law that we could remove people from office and make significant changes. It takes time. But if people get involved from a local level to a federal level, we can do that. With regard to Canada, I know your laws are different, but I'm hearing rumblings of the same thing, that maybe the solution to it is a revolution, a civil war. And in my view, and I know it's in your view too, that isn't a solution. That is going to be catastrophic for our country. So would you weigh in on that? And what I'm trying to do is lower the temperature of people fighting for freedom and liberty and individual rights, not only in our countries, but around the world. We got to use our heads. And we have mechanisms to address these problems. It takes time, but also it takes a lot of people to get involved. Peter?
Yeah. The history of it in your country recently, 2020, the Summer of Love, the BLM and the Antifa riots. And as an outside observer, it looks like that's exactly what those who were, I guess, institutionally supporting or financing those organizations, that looks like their goal. They were trying to create a civil war. You guys got through that carnage. You got through that carnage, and you didn't devolve into people taking up arms, and because that's what they want. They want that kind of fight so that government has the ability. It gives big government, the ability, and those who are either tacitly, implicitly, or explicitly supporting it, the ability to come in and give a heavy-handed response. It's called the strategy of tension, and you can look it up. The strategy of tension is where governments either encourage or allow tension and fight and conflict to happen so that the people will demand a heavy government solution. You guys got through that. You got through that well, and what's come out in the past 3 years is the truth about a lot of these organizations, about where they've been spending their money and the fraud and things like that. And so a lie is, halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on, but it takes a little bit of time, and truth has caught up. What do you have right now? You've got Congress. Your federal Congress has issued articles of impeachment to various people in the Biden regime. So you guys have that history of withstanding the push towards some sort of civil war, civil conflict, and you guys got through it. And you're seeing the fruits of that patience come out, and you're seeing those who, and I think transparency and prosecution is the way forward, and I think you're going to see that. Here in Canada, we don't have the checks and balances in the United States. Our system was basically a hangover from the British part, the British monarchy type system. All of our power in our political institutions centers around the Prime Minister of Canada. The Prime Minister of Canada. I'm actually reading a book right now, and I think it's very important for people to read history. I'm reading a book right now called The Friendly Dictatorship. You can get it on Amazon. It's $11 or $12, $13, and it's a fella back 2001 after the Liberals had secured their third successive government under John Chrétien. And we weren't dealing with any type of the political, civil freedom tensions that we're dealing with right now. But it really gets into how all the political power and structure, it refers to the Prime Minister of Canada as the Sun King, of which all political power revolves around. And the Canadian Prime Minister actually has more power vested in their office, regardless whether they're a Liberal or a Conservative, than any other G7 country. It's night and day between us and you guys. We have a history, just like you guys had a successful history of revolution against the British in 1776. We have not had a successful history of armed rebellion. The Red River rebellions of the 1800s ended up in the leader getting hung. Only later after the fact did they call him a hero when they wanted to appease other racial groups. Here, we have the trucker convoy. We had the trucker convoy of 2022, and the amount of cultural revolution that was to inculcate culture and freedom, and actually a very clear delineation and demarcation from the Canadian tendency to defer to authority. And what have we seen since then? Trudeau can't go 10 feet without tripping over a scandal, scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal. The Chinese police stations, the Chinese election interference, now the Trudeau Foundation that had received a $200,000 donation, fact, admitted, has now been caught. The Trudeau government the federal government has caught funding one of these Chinese police stations, $200,000, fact, and the numbers have to be the same. You have, again, we are so fortunate in Canada that we share a border with you guys, and we're not like Hong Kong or Taiwan. You had the Hong Kong freedom demonstrations years ago that got crushed. Right now, we've got peaceful demonstrations where Canada is now on a watch list. Senator Josh Hawley, Missouri. The Ohio State Legislature has passed a resolution against Canada. You have politicians, media, even your media. Recently, the radio stations, even in California, talking about the situation. So in Canada with Trudeau, we are very fortunate that we have that support and we share that border with you guys. When a country who's got 87% of the trade, not across the country, but north-south, has control of Congress and has the ability to leverage their weight, things happen. And even if it's maybe not so great actors like the Biden regime telling Trudeau to do something, we do not want to give the federal government the reason and justification to crack down further on folks before the truth gets out. When we do, not we, but when agitators either do or encourage people to commit violence, it gives the government and it gives bad actors that strategy of tension I talked about, the ability to crack down or offer a strong solution, and the people would accept it. We don't want that. You can't give the bad actors the opportunity to seem legitimate in the eyes of the public. This is not a shooting war. This is not bombs and bullets. By the grace of God, we're dealing with information. We're dealing with vaccines. That's the war that's going on right now. It's an information war.
You brought up some very good points with regard to trade between the United States and Canada, the resolutions in the Ohio State Legislature and others. The media here is, in fact, you brought up another fact. The media here is in fact, now reporting on a lot of what's going on in Canada. And I must tell you, One America News had me on recently to discuss that, and more is on the way. In addition to that, Peter, I know you're familiar with our SOS letter campaign. We, as of now, are exceeding 20,000 letters. That was within the past 2 weeks. And I really want to bring tens of thousands more before the United States Congress, whether we do it in D.C., that's our first choice. I don't know if we're going to be able to get close to the Capitol because of the environment that's going on. But either way, we're going to get it before our Congress and perhaps more importantly, the media. Because once they see, and I'm hoping at least 100,000 or more, once they see a pile of mail of 100,000 letters from people who are looking to preserve their freedom and liberty, that's going to really raise some eyebrows. And by the way, Peter, so that you and your citizens know, the impact has been worldwide. We've gotten letters from the Netherlands, from Portugal, from the Czech Republic. I was very surprised to see that, as well as Poland and a few other countries. So certainly this peaceful, articulate movement that the Canadian people are moving forward with within the framework of the law is speaking much louder than anybody who's going to try to attempt to do something outside the law.
I'll put something else out there. When people feel victimized, when people feel powerless, when they're angry, when they're afraid, when they're upset, they almost this environment where it feels like the walls are kind of closing in on you. I've noticed there's people who are like that, who talk about that side of it. They don't want to be shipped off in cars to concentration camps. And that piece, it's been the Gandhis who've changed the world more. And I feel like it's a misplaced sense of when we don't feel important. It's kind of It's a desire to kind of feel important and to feel like you're somebody, and this talking about picking up a gun. And my question is, do any of the people thinking that, do they want, we glorify war and the wars that we've won, World War One, World War Two, but those countries were completely bombed out afterwards, and the amount of repair and the economic loss and the loss of life and all that kind of stuff. Think about civil wars. Think about your guys' civil war, and the amount of American life that was lost with folks killing each of the North and the South, killing each other, right? Think about, for those of us who served in law enforcement or in the military in any capacity, we kind of understand what bloodshed is. And we do everything we can. We're trained everything we can to avoid that stuff. And so just think about that. I think for the people, and I don't think that's your audience, but it's kind of a learning point and just a talking point about that is, think about what people need to really think about what they're talking about. And at the end of the day, we're all going to have to face Jesus face to face and give an account for our lives. So if the desire is to pull a trigger and to shed blood for the sake of glory or some misplaced sense of importance, really think about that, because there's going to be accountability in this life and the next.
Well, you mentioned a few great things that needed to be said. This is indeed an information war. And here at Campaign for America, we've been putting out commercials and some other live stream, very short live stream broadcast messages to counter what the Communist Party's putting out. And in fact, to encounter some of the supporters of the Communist Party in America are putting out. And if more people on our side, and I say our side meaning the true heartfelt fighters for freedom and liberty, put out information that's true, information that's accurate, we're going to overcome the Communist Party propaganda machine. And, another thing you brought up is the fear. As we know, I know you know this, that one of the objectives of the Communist Party is to replace a person's faith with fear. Instead of fear of God, a fear of the state. And we need to remember, and you said it before, you mentioned Jesus Christ, we need to remember who we are. We need to remember that the liberty and freedom are gifts from God, and no man, prime minister or president or any leader is going to take that away. But there is power. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this. There is power in prayer. And I believe that to pray for wisdom, pray, what's the scripture say? I think it's the 121st Psalm, maybe the 21st Psalm, but it says, show me thy way, teach me thy path, O Lord. So before we act, we need to pray that God leads us in a direction that'll be beneficial for the cause and not hurt the cause.
Absolutely. A lot of, I was speaking at a Romanian Pentecostal church a couple of Sundays ago down in Calgary. And I was invited to speak about people are very, very concerned about the child sexualization agenda that's being pushed in schools, and also folks are very concerned about overtaxation. And I made the point, and I said this might not be popular, but we can all read Deuteronomy chapter 28, and we can all see the blessings and the curses that the Lord, and when it says Jesus is Lord, firmly believes Jesus is Lord. The Old Testament where it says Lord, Jesus is Lord. And it's very clear the blessings and the curses that the Lord Jesus Christ lays down for those of it when a nation follows him versus when a nation doesn't follow him. And the curses, it says your children will be taken. You'll be serving people of foreign tongues, and you're going to have your wealth. Again, I'm butchering it, speaking ad lib like this, but when you read it, it's like, whoa, this really is the situation. All these blessings that we would have, and when our countries have been great, and we've been, nations that have acknowledged the Lord Jesus Christ in schools, in prayer, the Lord's Prayer, all that kind of stuff, with the cultural piece. But the second, wow, look at all these curses. Yes, we've allowed all these sins and vices, drunkenness, and you can go down the list, and you can see. And this really shouldn't shock us. And I think what we've seen, and not only is it a information war, but it's also a spiritual war. And I think that we're seeing the light, and it's when the people cry out, suffer, and pain, and the Lord Jesus says, well, which God are you going to serve, right? Go serve your idols. But I do firmly believe the Lord is having mercy on us. I do believe that there's the fight's not done until the Lord returns. But people are coming back to faith, back to decency, Families are being strengthened, and it's in the easy times and the good times that it makes weak people. We've had tougher times a little bit historically, and it's made stronger people. And I think that's a very good thing. I think we're coming back to Christ, and that's a good thing.
Peter, we're running out of time, which means I have to have you back on. This has been an extraordinary conversation with you, but something else that was going on too. As you were speaking, I could sense your adding value to taking a calm perspective at things, to get people to settle down, and let's be prayerful and thoughtful. And we need that in these times. There's, especially in America. I mean, I've called out my own Republican Party. Stop the name calling, the incivility, and the anger and the hate. And I'm talking about our leaders. And unfortunately, you know what happens, Peter? People begin to follow the leader when they should be following the leader you just mentioned, Jesus Christ. I don't know if the guy ever raised his voice. Do you? I don't. I mean, maybe a couple of times, but I mean, in anger and hate, Jesus Christ never raised his voice. He was tough. He was strong, but he did things in such a way to calm people down and to get them to look to the Father. So I'll tell you. So maybe one of those unintended blessings you've given us tonight in the audience.
Thank you.
You certainly did.
Our spirits are all going to leave our body at some point, and at some point within, whether it be 10 years, whether it be 1,000 years, they lived pretty long back in those days, is we're all going to have to give an account before Lord Jesus Christ for our life, for what we did and what we didn't do. And he did not give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of love, power, and a sound mind. And and by God's grace, that's, I know where I came from. I know the sin that I used to walk in before I was saved, and the Lord had mercy on me. And by His grace, I'll continue to walk with that spirit of what I just said for the rest of my life, and it'd be to the benefit of people and to glorify our God.
Peter, would you join us again sometime in the near future?
Anytime. And
I'd like you to show me. Oh, listen, it's been an honor. I'd like you to show your fellow countrymen and women. Look at that. Got Canada on there. So that's great stuff. So let freedom ring. Peter, thanks so much. God bless you and your family. And we will be in touch with you. Thank you very much.
God bless you, Lieutenant. Take care.
God bless you. Well, folks, what an extraordinary individual he is. Folks, we're going to extend our broadcast because we had a change in our introduction. I'll be back in a moment with Richard Ellison from the United States of America. We're going to be talking about politics as we see it now in America. I'll be right back. right, folks, I'm going to bring Richard Ellison on. He's from the United States of America. He's going to be speaking about politics in our time. He's neither Republican or Democrat. He's an American citizen who wants his country back. Here we go, folks. Richard Ellison. Well, as promised, ladies and gentlemen, in fact, back by popular command, Richard Ellison. He's with us tonight. He was with us a few weeks ago. And Richard, after you completed your broadcast with me a few weeks ago, I got a lot of good number of emails where people said it was refreshing to hear someone speak not about political agendas with regard to one party or the other, but to talk about what's good for America. Now, what I have found since I have had that discussion with you, and perhaps you have also, is that people, Democrat, Republican, and independents, seem to be keeping an eye on a guy that came out of nowhere named Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I'd like to have your perspective on his policies, his agenda, maybe a little bit of background on him, and where do you think he's headed?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, just to step back for a second on I think if you strip down the talking points and strip down the rhetoric, 90+% of us agree on issues. We want to have a good family, a good life, work fair day, get fair pay, be treated well. We don't differ on those basic core values. So that's why a lot of people are tired of the rhetoric. On RFK Jr., I don't think he's come out of nowhere. He's been sort of out there in the public eye for many years, going back because of his family to his childhood days. And he's had, his life challenges. He's on his third marriage, I think. And he did have troubles with substance abuse for a while. He's kicked that finally, 12-step program. And so he was approached supposedly by President Trump to look into the drug policy. Now, there's been varying reports on that. That was back in 2017. So, he's been a big proponent of Children's Health Defense. He started that nonprofit. He lobbied Congress to allow parents to opt their children out of mandatory vaccination programs. And he's also been very critical of Anthony Fauci. So he's not your progressive Democrat. He's what I call more of a traditional Democrat, more of workers, family, personal rights. But yet he's kind of crossed the line on a couple things that I don't think could be implemented. Like he said, we ought to jail climate deniers. And I actually did watch a video of him saying that and not just believing what the media told me. And so that's a very interesting viewpoint he has. That's a big negative. So that's kind of my high level view on him.
Well, you're right. It's a little bit too much when you hear that he wants to jail climate deniers. Hopefully that was just campaign rhetoric that he didn't mean, and maybe he'll backtrack on that. But a couple of issues that I've heard with regard to Republicans who are watching him, he seems to be fighting for every cause that the Republicans are fighting for. And we've got ourselves in a situation, and Richard, I've been saying this for over a year. If the Democrats find a candidate who is somewhat conservative, moderate, if you will, we're going to have a problem winning the general election if that person happens to get the Democrat nomination. I saw the debate last night. I'm sorry, not the debate, the CNN news conference or town hall with Donald Trump. And I've got to tell you, my feelings were not too good. First of all, the reporter, I don't think gave him enough time to answer questions. But besides that, I looked at the same things that were going on in 2016. The denial of the election in 2020, the rhetoric that was coming out, the name calling. And it bothers me. It bothers me sincerely because, I was on President Trump's National Campaign Advisory Board, believed in him as being a great president, which he was. But, Richard, this is the 21st century. And I'm going to pose this to you, and I'd like to have your opinion on this. After the town hall, multiple polling organizations took a poll on what went on. Most of the polls say that the American people are exhausted, the drama, the exhaustion, get down to policies, get down to what's really hurting the American people. And as far as the 2020 election, and I've said this all along, look, I don't know, Richard, what happened. I don't know. All right. But I do know this, we've got to move on. We have to as a country. What's your view on all of what I just shared with you?
Well, I did not watch the town hall last night. I don't pay a lot of attention to mainstream media, and I believe more and more people are not. And the wackier they sound, the more radical they behave, the more the vast majority middle realizes and ignores them. So we're going in the correct direction. And so, yes, we're weary of the demagoguery, and it's just more and more clear to more and more people, even Democrats. And I would say the majority of Democrats are what I would categorize as traditional Democrats, kind of like Kennedy is and his family is. But you wouldn't, the radical left who's gotten in power has left everybody else behind. So we just have to educate people on that and highlight the differences so that people can make informed decisions. They're not getting it from the mainstream media. That's for sure. Polling, I don't put a lot of stock in polling there, because you can twist polling to sound any way you want it to sound. There's a few good pollsters out there, but the ones that are generally quoted in the mainstream media are not reliable, in my opinion. So
would you think that the majority of Americans are exhausted over the political climate in this country, the rhetoric, the outright hatred? And one thing that I am very, very not happy about is if you disagree with someone, you're demonized. I mean, I see that happening in the Republican Party. There are many things that I disagree with regard to my party, and I get demonized. And then those who disagree with me, from others, they get demonized. And no one seems to be talking with each other anymore. They're talking at each other. Now, how do we come to a point where we're going to listen to each other and work with each other? One thing you mentioned earlier about coming back to a party like JFK, what was stunning to me was when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that he was running for president. Stunning in a good way, okay? He said to the American people, perhaps to the world, that he wants to bring the Democrat Party back to the party of FDR, JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King. Now, that resonated with me because I lived that entire time in history except FDR.
Yeah, I was going to say, not
yeah, I wasn't around, folks, when FDR was around. But certainly, you read about him and you read about the things he did during the most difficult time in American history of World War II. But my point is this: when I heard Robert Kennedy mention JFK, Robert Kennedy Sr., Martin Luther King, I'm thinking about, there's something going on here. There's something very different here, because he's not talking about the party of Joe Biden, of Barack Obama, of John Kerry, and on and on and on. He's talking about the party back then that represented who? We the people.
Yeah, and it's the party of AOC and Waters and Pelosi and Madam Schiff and all the other nasty Democrats. There's a few good Democrats. Unfortunately, they tend to leave the party. So, um, but yes, it's more of the traditional Democrats is where he's veering back to, or a proponent of, and it is amazing that the Democrat, the DNC, has already announced there will be no debates.
Hmm.
Wait a minute, debates are healthy. Open discussion is healthy. The light of day is healthy. It makes the ultimate nominee stronger, and the the tempering and fire makes them stronger against the other opponent when it is time for the general election. And I just kind of Googled quickly on the last time a sitting president was not given the nomination was 1852, Franklin Pierce, our 14th president. Now there have been 4 other times that sitting presidents, but not elected, were not given the nomination. As you know, over history, we've had a lot of presidents die in office. The vice president takes over and then doesn't get the nomination. That's happened 4 times. So there's nothing stopping us from having an open debate, an open convention, and a decision to nominate somebody other than the sitting president.
I'm concerned about our young people today. You're absolutely right. A debate is the best transparent mechanism shedding light on the true character, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding and qualifications of a person running for office. I think young people need to see that, but here's the problem in the 21st century. Debates are not civil anymore. Again, we go back to the anger, to the hatred, to the malice, and on and on and on. And I sat with some Republican leaders in this state as recently as a few weeks ago, and I've asked them, why don't you guys in New Jersey, here in the Republican Party, demand that every candidate running for office on a Republican ticket, in a primary especially, demand they sign a pledge not to attack another Republican, his character. Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment. Well, some of them said to me they tried that, but nobody seemed to want to jump on board. And Richard, I've always said if a candidate has to degrade or denigrate opposition to make themselves look good, then they're no good. They shouldn't even be on the ballot. So again, we go back to debates. Yes, we go back to the rhetoric. Again, how do we solve that problem? I've searched my mind and I've said the only thing to do is to have them pledge and then just tell them they're not going to be supported by their party if they don't make that pledge. But when they don't want to make the pledge, you're not going to have anybody running for office. I mean, it seems they're more interested in their political survival than the survival of the country.
Well, the old phrase of if it bleeds, it leads in the news. It's if you are more controversial, you get more airtime. There is no bad press, just all press is good. I don't believe in that, but that's kind of one of the other beliefs out there. And yes, Ronald Reagan, in a dark time of the Iran hostages, 24% interest, 18% inflation, elderly people buying dog food to buy meat to eat, just very dark times, gas crisis, gas lines, and unable to drive because you had to wait to get gas. And in comes Ronald Reagan speaking positively, saying, we're the greatest country in the world. He was all positive message. And everyone just like lit up and realized, yeah, we really are. I mean, you can see these people, penniless, no clothing, starving to death, and I'm not so bad off. And yes, I'm going to work, and I can, we can all make this country great again. And so that message and that sort of campaign should have gotten more attention these days. We're in those same times,
Yes.
very grim times. Even Democrats are admitting things that they see are not good. So, and that's a rare time when that happens. So,
That was Reagan's Morning in America campaign. I'll never forget those commercials. You woke up and you saw beautiful America. And it was, I find it interesting that the way you described the gas lines and the food shortages, et cetera, of course, under Jimmy Carter when he was president. Do you see something similar going on now under Joe Biden? And I'm glad you brought Reagan up in that respect because, and I'm sure I shared this with you before, as I get around the country, I would ask people if there's anybody you would like to see become president, either those living today or gone yesterday, please let me know. What do you think? Almost to a person, Ronald Reagan. And when I asked why, they said because he had great character, he was respectable, and he brought hope. He brought hope to us. And I think you hit upon something, Richard, is that we don't have leaders, in my view, and you may differ and certainly weigh in on this. We don't have leaders standing up and providing us a message of hope. It's all gloom and doom. It's all damnation. It's all let's kill the other guy before the other guy kills us. I mean, where's the message that we are the shining city on a hill?
It's not out there. Now, I would not say that the Republicans are looking to be as aggressive against the Democrats as the Democrats are being beyond aggressive, unethical attacks. Anything goes with the Democrats, and just example of who paid for the court case that just was verdicted a couple days ago here in New York City against Donald Trump. Who paid for that? A Soros supporter, a Soros money launderer. So, I mean, everything and anything goes with these people. The Republicans, for the most part, are not that way. And to our detriment, they're not, I don't want them to be unethical, but they're certainly not attacking as vehemently as they should against the fraud, the lies, the corruption, and everything that's going on. So it's we really need to be more aggressive in stopping it. And some of the Democrats who have been aggressive and are vilified by their own party, and Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Manchin, vilified. So and there's a couple more, I think, and RFK Jr. vilified.
Well, to your point, about the Republicans being more aggressive, I agree, which leads me to yesterday's 9:00 a.m. press conference by the Republicans leadership, Jim Comer and them, leading us to believe that there was so much evidence, that there was so much that they could put against Biden that he'd be impeached the next day. And yet, I read the news reports today, I saw the conference, it seemed as if we got not much. All right. Well, okay. You got the money trail, you got the bank accounts, everybody's making money in the Biden crime family, quote unquote. What are you going to do about it? And what has been done with any investigation that the Republican Party, and just so people know, if you're just tuning in, I'm a Republican. All right. Staying with the party. I believe in rebuilding it, but I also believe in being honest and speaking to power. And the way I speak to power is, well, what are you guys doing? What in the world are you doing for the American people? All these investigations, all these committee hearings. Well, what's the end game?
Well, I mean, that's the problem is you have the federal departments are totally corrupt, just need to be shut down. FBI, CIA, NSA, Homeland Security, IRS, all need to be just shut down. They're all corrupt. And it's not just in the last 2 years. They're corrupt going back many years. And so the DOJ will not bring a case against Hunter Biden and the Biden crime family. So you have a majority in the House. They could vote, but what's going to happen? It has to then go to the Senate, which is not even going to put it on the floor. And so it's going to go nowhere because there's too many corrupt people in the legislative branches. And the executive branch with the federal departments are not going to do anything about it because they have been protecting the Biden crime family for all these years. Who knows? Probably they're being all paid off.
Well,
We
I suppose, Richard, the solution then boils down to we the people. We have to get involved. I was on the air with someone the other night, and they said something more or less. Well, the people are more interested, let's say, in the score of a baseball game to see who's going to win than to see who's winning in a fight for freedom and liberty. And that's not good in our country. People have fallen asleep. They're not getting involved. And at the end of the day, we can end up finding ourselves, instead of with the stars and stripes here, with a hammer and sickle on a red flag.
Yeah, there's a cable show about that, about America being taken over by the Nazis, and Japan and Germany split the country in two.
High Man in a Castle.
Yes.
High
Yeah.
Man in a Castle. I saw that.
It's not too far from reality. But anyway, no, yes. And a good example, George Santos. Yeah, he did some things. He's got some serious charges against him. He's innocent until proven guilty, but everyone seems to be against him. If you audited all the congressmen and the 100 senators, you'd probably find a lot of them did that much and worse as what George Santos did. And what I even posted in one of the social medias today is I would do an audit, a blind audit, take an accounting firm, one accounting firm to gather all the facts, the bank accounts, the bookkeeping, all that much, abstract out the names, the addresses. So you can't tell who it is. Just put a number, case number 1, case number 2. And then there's a master list of case number 1 is George Santos, case number 2 is each one, and so on down the list of 535 or so. Every single one of the congressmen and senators audit their books blindly. You don't know who they are. And you say book number 42, many violations. Who's case 42? Oh, that happens to be XYZ senator. So do it blindly. Don't do it with partisanship. And then you would come down and say, yeah, we've got the reason we're not getting them representing the people is they're protecting themselves.
Well, as we wrap things up here, Richard, I believe there's hope for our country. People like you are out there. Other Americans are out there. We're making great advances in getting parents re-engaged in their school boards, their city council meetings. So I would say, and again, I'd like to have your view on this. Do you see more people now staying away from mainstream media, looking at live stream programs like this, getting educated, and then engaging their political leaders and removing those from office that don't represent the common good of the people?
I think so. As far as removal, we don't have the power just yet. The Convention of States is chugging away, has been for many years, but it's chugging away and getting more and more states. I would like to see that get 37 states needed to sign on to it.
Yeah.
So that's probably our best chance.
Are you involved with them in any way, Richard?
I'm on the fringes. I'm just too busy to deal with it. But yeah, I support them morally. So
yeah. Glad you brought them up, which means maybe we'll have you on again, and maybe we'll reach out to someone from Convention of States. I'd like to have them on the air. If you can help us out in getting a contact, that would be terrific. I think the people should know about them. Well, that's it, my friend. I thank you for joining us. Appreciate it very much that you took the time, and we'll have you on again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Take care now. Bye-bye. Well, folks, thanks so much for sticking with us. We did change our format a bit. If you tune in late, as you see, we're on a little later, so I'll get right to it. Folks, when we sign off, go to Shadow Davis. He should be on the air right now over there in Canada. He's doing a great job in helping preserve freedom and liberty. There's our website. Please go to our website, look it over, and you might find things that you didn't know about us. Now, Wednesday nights at 8:30, we have a 5-minute. I have a 5-minute radio broadcast. Has everything to do with the Bible and politics, the Bible and God, the Bible and government. So it's 5 minutes. We are on Rumble and other platforms. So take a look at Rumble or YouTube, Facebook, whatever, and you might find things that you'll find more interesting. Well, that's it, folks. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll see you next Thursday night, same time, same place. And please, 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 don't be discouraged. Look what's happening in America. It's a slow but sure progress. And believe me, folks, the Biden ship is going down, and following him will be the Trident, the Trudeau ship, and then the other ships of tyrants around the entire country, or entire world, shall I say, is going to sink. And guess what ships are going to be floating? The ships that show this flag and this flag. God bless you all, folks. See you next Thursday night. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. Let freedom ring.